Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Between Two Brokers. Today we have Bill Payne with First Home Mortgage, 843-532-1392. You need to call him if you have any questions or mortgage needs. We are going to just talk about what we're seeing happening in the market, and it's pretty sad. Everyone likes that. And one of the questions was, is this something that we want to share? And Erin and I said at the same time,
it's real. This is real life, folks.
This is what's happening.
Yep.
So,
basically, is it a good time to buy?
Did the Fed overcorrect was another question you asked.
I asked if the Fred.
Yeah, we call him whatever.
Did Fred overcorrect? And your response was they had to because they waited too long to correct, because what we were experiencing was not normal.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so I don't have enough stats to answer the question about like really what's happening to prices. We need some time to go by, and then I need the people that do all that stuff to tell me in an email.
But what you did see on the hot sheet yesterday was what?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. So we currently have 2,800 active listings in Charleston, which is like somewhere between a third and a half of what a normal inventory would be. So we're still in a seller's market. But yesterday when I went on the hot sheet, I saw that there were 210 price reductions, which means close to, whatever that percentage is, like 8% of everybody reduced their prices. I have had quite a lot of listings in the last couple of months, and I have done significant price reductions, but that is mostly due to the fact that sellers are still stuck on the old price of their home, what they thought it was worth at one point, and it's just not. So again, we've talked about this on the podcast a lot, but there was a period of time where you slapped a price on a house and you sold it. And now you do actually have to look at comparable homes, and you have to be somewhere in line. What I'm finding, with the exception of one listing that I have, is that as long as you're in line with market value, the property is still selling quickly. Like once I got my listing to the right price, I got a full price offer. So, and there are still homes that are selling in multiple offer situations.
Yep.
So, when we say that it's sad, I mean, this is a complete joke. People are moving to Charleston like crazy. The market is still a seller's market. You can still get a good price for your home, but there's not as much competition, and buyers are cautious or waiting. There's not as many buyers in the buyer pool because of interest rates. That's the way it is, but they're still out there. Do you have a lot of buyers right now?
I do, that are on the sidelines.
Okay, but where are they from? Are they local?
Few. More out of town than local.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have the same experience. Or I have people that have moved here and rented and are waiting to buy. But I think it's very hard. And Bill, we've talked about this before, like for local people to afford stuff here. Because the reason that people have cash that are moving here, because people are always like, well, how do they get all this money? And my answer is, if you owned real estate in California for 10 years, you have millions of dollars inherently. Mm-hmm. It's not, because they're not making tons of money in their jobs. They just owned real estate and
sold it.
Yeah. And then here it's cheap. Cheaper.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, Bill, I want to talk to you about what you're seeing, and you get a little bit more insight in terms of appraisals. I haven't had a buyer get a loan in a while, so I haven't really looked at any of that. So what are you seeing, and what are people saying in the appraisal world?
Yeah. Okay. First, I totally agree that the majority of buyers are transplants. Mm-hmm. And so they are selling and coming in with cash. That's a beautiful thing. Specifically for appraisals, there's a little section that talks about stability of the neighborhood, stability of the market right there, and then what home values are doing. Are they stable? Are they increasing? Or are they declining? And I'm now seeing appraisals return with the box check declining. So that tells me that people are now sitting on the sidelines for longer because either A, sticker shock of the price, B, sellers aren't being real with what they can or think they should sell the house for. And like interest rates are just making everybody put a pause. Mm-hmm. So if buyers are pausing on purchasing a home, that should increase inventory, which makes it a more competitive market. And what happens in a competitive market? Values or sales prices decline. Mm-hmm. So this is necessary, or this is what should be happening to kind of create more balance between buyers and sellers in the real estate market. It's not a fun experience to go through, but I think it's necessary, even for beautiful Charleston, with all the appreciation we've had. It's got to naturally slow down at some point and catch its breath. And then that'll bring in, and then couple that with interest rates being lower, that'll bring about more buyers. So the supply demand will come in more balance. Mm-hmm.
When do you anticipate that? Because we know you're really good at predicting the future.
Well, your comment about looking at reports backwards, looking data to see, hey, are home values really declining? Mm-hmm. Well, you can't get that information until it's a month or two old. Right. The Federal Reserve's doing the exact same thing with looking at employment, inflation, things of that nature. So, in my opinion, it has started. The pendulum is starting to shift. Mm-hmm. Now, what'll be interesting to see is how quickly it shifts, and if it's like a wrecking ball going through as far as the economy goes, or if it's a soft landing. The longer it takes for this shift to occur, the harder the landing is going to be. So I welcome this kind of change. Mm-hmm. And we're lucky specifically in Charleston. The demand's always going to be high.
Right.
And as people become more comfortable with what their money is doing, what the economy is doing, those folks will get off the sidelines and start buying. So we'll have a whole nother slew of buyers coming in that will mop up that inventory. It may not, and so the one that gets hurt the most, I guess, if there's any pain, is the seller, but they're still making a ton of money. It's just not as much as maybe they had hoped.
Right.
Well, and I'm still seeing multiple offer situations in a certain price point.
What price point?
Under $550, $600.
Yeah. Totally agree with that.
Yeah. And actually, interesting enough, a house I won in multiple offers last week, the list price was $505. We escalated up to $525, and we were not the highest offer. There were 4 offers total. The highest offer was $530, but we won because we were willing to pay an appraisal gap coverage of $10,000. Mm-hmm. And the sellers were concerned about it appraising. So, it's not always the price. Luckily, these sellers have their head on straight and, can think clearly. And it wasn't just about, an extra $5,000.
From a strategic standpoint, I think that's going to come into play for both of y'all. Having buyers that are willing to fulfill that gap between the appraised value and the sales price, because if we truly hit a market where stability or a decline in values, that's what the appraisal is going to reflect. So it may come in. The appraiser is going to have a harder time justifying that sales price. So having that conversation with your clients, your buyers, so that they understand how that works could be very meaningful and help get the deal.
Erin, will you talk about an appraisal gap? We've talked about it on the podcast before, but explain what it is.
Yes. So we'll just use this for an example. We're contracted at $525. And we kept the appraisal contingency in there. So if the appraisal comes back, let's say as low as $515, the deal is still on because my buyers agreed to pay out of pocket up to a $10,000 appraisal gap coverage. So we've got a $10,000 gap in the appraised value and the contract price. They'll come out of pocket for that. Anything lower than $515, then we have to renegotiate with the seller. But that's what you gotta have cash to cover it though.
Right.
And it's a safer way than just waiving the appraisal completely, which is, you know, what sellers would love to see, but not happening.
Have you seen appraisals not come in at value?
I have, but it's usually your kind of unique property. And not unique in that where it's located, but maybe the age of it. Like if you look inside, it looks like nobody's touched it since the 70s, but it's in a neighborhood that has really high values. So that's a tough one because your level of construction doesn't match the comparable homes in the neighborhood.
Right.
And that's a terribly difficult thing for an appraiser to reevaluate or adjust values based upon that. That's like throwing darts, because what is the cost to redo a home?
Right.
You know, renovation, far more than what we
ton.
all guess. Yeah, twice of what you're expecting.
An imperial shit ton.
So that's it's in those situations which are happening. Those are a lot of the homes that are moving right now. I'm seeing, and this is a price range usually of $750,000 to about $1.5 million, but 30-40% of the appraisals come in less. But in that situation, at that price point, those buyers typically have the cash to, even if they weren't contractually obligated to bridge it, they want to.
So when the appraisal hasn't come back, have those buyers followed through with closing?
Yeah.
All of them or most of them?
Unless it's like structural stuff, which comes up in the home inspection, coupled with a gap in the appraised value. I would say that in that instance, we have like 2 strikes. Yeah, people are bailing. But if it's just a difference in value, they still want it. They still want to be in that neighborhood because of the schools, because of the location of downtown, whatever it may be. But that's the selling point.
And I mean, that's the thing is, you know, we're long-term owning real estate in Charleston. Like truly, if I had millions and millions of dollars, I would just buy as much as I could, knowing what I know. I mean, not just anything, but long-term, it's just like we've talked about it before, supply and demand. Like people are coming, you can't build up, you can't really go out that far. Like values are going to continue to increase here. So I think that's another reason why people are not afraid to move forward.
I totally agree. Like Park Circle.
Right.
They can't create more land.
Right.
So, and as that area still continues to develop, those values are going to increase. So maybe this has a little to do with being right next to the harbor, the ocean. You know, you can't build in that direction. So if you have limited supply and land, it's going to help sustain home values.
Yeah.
Versus, say, a Phoenix, Arizona. No knock on Phoenix, Arizona, but I mean, you can from
Sprawl.
360 degrees, you can just sprawl out. And that's why you see, in my opinion, when real estate takes a dip, areas like that get hit the hardest.
Yeah.
And y'all both live in Old Village, which for our listeners that are not local is just a very, very, very desirable place to be.
Creme.
Yeah, they're very fancy. So what have you guys seen in terms of this market? Like the neighborhood's completely changed since you've lived here.
Wow. Yeah, totally.
So tell me what you've observed. So when did you move into the neighborhood? But the last house.
Our current house we moved in 2016.
Okay, the house before that.
That was 2010.
So you've really been here for 13 years.
I have. And
Okay.
I would say at that point in time, most homes had not been redone, hadn't been touched.
Right.
I'd say maybe 50% of them are now. And the average age has probably declined. Well, I'm just old, but...
Oh, no, it definitely...
Okay.
There's an influencer on every street now.
Yes, there is. And so the demographics changed. All the homes are redone. It's a beautiful neighborhood. The architectural board, though it's a struggle to work with them, has done a good job on maintaining the type of work that's being done. And again, it kind of folds into, this is a desirable place because it's close to the water and because of the schools and proximity to downtown. But it's also, there's not more land. So values are sustained because you can't, where else are you going to go to get this? There is no other place. You agree with that?
I do, yeah.
When did you move here?
I moved here in 11.
Okay.
Spence bought here in 03.
Okay.
And I was actually surprised this spring into early summer how quickly the teardowns went, because it seemed like those came to a screeching halt and everyone just wanted, homes that were done and looked like Pinterest boards. And then all of a sudden these teardowns were getting, going under contract very quickly and closing for more than asking price. And so there's still people probably from California or New York that are coming down and just paying cash and scrapping homes, and they want to build their dream house. Because some of the houses that are on the market now have been listed for a while, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're beautiful houses.
How much are they paying for the land to tear down?
Oh, easily $1 million to $1,250,000, 1.3. Yeah.
How did the house around the corner from you get built? Do you know?
Right there on the corner.
The
of
one
McCann's?
that's under construction. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because that must have been a tear down.
That was a total tear down. And so I think, to Erin's point, it's like somebody would rather buy something that's cheaper, that's just in horrible condition, and just completely tear it down, than buy something at the mid-range price point and just then try to redo certain things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's how much money people have.
It's yeah. I mean, the top 2% are just like getting richer and richer and richer by the year. And, I don't think these are their primary homes.
Yeah.
Not all of them, that's for sure.
I mean, this is their third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh house. And it's there goes the neighborhood.
Well, Erin's upset about it, but if you're in that top 2%, give me a call.
I'm just kidding.
I'll help you buy a house in Erin's neighborhood, and
we did the same
then
thing.
you
I mean,
can
we
ruin
tore down
it.
a house and we rebuilt too, but it's because of the flood zone.
Whatever.
But a question that producer Lindsay said was, are sellers having to compensate by lowering their price, compensate for the high interest rates? And I think in many cases, yes, that's true, because with the lower interest rate, people weren't even like close to maxing out their budget.
Right.
I mean, they're like, yeah, we'll pay $100,000 over. It doesn't matter. We're not close to like, maxing out our monthly budget. And now, I mean, thank God they're not handing out mortgages left and right, but people are stretched. And I think in no place like Charleston do people live above their means.
No, I think you're 100% correct. Things were they were too comfortable, man. It was too easy. And now this is why you see a pulse. Things are more uncomfortable because interest rate, the cost is so high, or cost to renovate, cost of materials, labor is more expensive. So that is part of the whole big discussion of what the Fed's doing in inflation, and it will balance out. But yeah, the reason we got here in the first place is everything was so damn easy and comfortable.
Yeah. Just to finish up, I think we are down, and Erin, correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of number of transactions for the year. It's around 20% versus last year, right?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe
20 to
22.
25%. Yeah, I think it was 22% is what I saw. But sales prices are still quite high.
They are, and they're increasing, albeit slowly.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 to 4%, depending on the neighborhood. But
And that stat is pretty consistent for me, like where my numbers will wind up. I don't really know how the year is going to wind up, but I'm probably down about 20% from where I was last year in terms of sales. What about you, Bill? I mean, obviously when you were doing like 3% interest rates, like you probably didn't sleep for like 2 years. So like how busy are you now?
The second half of 2022 last year sucked. That's because everybody was buying with cash. And that's what it took to get the home. And then at that point in time, interest rates had started to increase. And so those that bought with cash always have the capability of refinancing and pulling that cash out, but it just didn't make economic sense with the continuous increase in rates. If they do need or want some of that cash, they will eventually pull it out once interest rates are in a more reasonable level. This year has definitely been better than last, but solely because of first-time home buyers. And that is because first-time home buyers have, I guess, waited around and feel comfortable enough to make the jump at these price points, at these interest rates, or else, and part of that, what has promoted that is the cost to rent here in this area.
Yeah.
So it took a while for the cost of rents to catch up with the cost to own the home. That has occurred. So what would you rather do? I'd rather own a home versus rent. It sucks because it's a big nut that they have to pay, but they have no choice. That or live with mom and dad, not in Charleston.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for joining us and giving us an update on what's going on. And how can people get in touch with you? Besides me giving out your
He
cell
doesn't
phone
know his
number.
number. You know it.
What's my handle?
I don't know what your handle is. Anyway.
Bill Payne Mortgage. Just
Bill
look it up.
Payne, 843-532-1392. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And check us out at Between Two Brokers and at Smith Spencer Real Estate. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.